your vision has to be something that's quantifiable, so something you can achieve and have a specific date on, and ambitious to inspire people just by saying it. The thing that you do when you don't do that, when you don't stay on your purpose, is you're able to give yourself an out to say like, oh, well, I wanted to achieve that, but then, oh, Bob got in the way. Oh, man. Or, oh, my kids got busy and I was too busy, I couldn't do it.
When you've got your clear-cut process.
You got your process.
Mark, there's been so much happening in your life. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad to meet you. We've known each other for at least 2 years, and this is the first time we've actually met in person. We've been speaking at the same events and just have never actually been in the same room. So I'm so happy to meet you in person.
Yes, you came in Austin, so I'm like, okay, I can't avoid it
anymore. Can't avoid her any longer. I tracked you down. But thank you. All that to say, right before we started, you mentioned that you actually 2 days ago wrapped up coaching your son's softball, or not softball, football.
Football, no. We're still in baseball. That's the difference.
We're still, yeah. Okay, so baseball's still going on. Football's done. Okay.
Yes.
Baseball never seems to stop.
No, baseball's intense. Well, it's so funny because you look at like the pro players now.
Yeah.
You know, my son wants to be MLB, play for the Yankees kind of thing. And,
I love
it. It's so intense. I mean, there's kids his age. He's 11.
Yeah.
And like 12-year-olds throwing like 80, 90 miles an hour.
No way.
Oh, it's so competitive.
Wow.
And it's like, I think when I was a kid, it was like you could start playing something in high school and you could still be pretty legit. But these days, it's like these kids have been playing like seriously for 6 years before high school. And so it's super intense. But he loves it. He's a perfectionist. It's a good sport for him.
Well, and kids are starting to get drafted right out of high school. They're not even going to college.
Well, but even some of the college players for baseball, like they'll make more money playing in college than they will when they get into the minors because these college contracts.
Well, now they're allowed to.
Yeah. So they'll get
and that's
paid.
new. That's only been in the last 18 months?
Yeah.
2 years?
Super recent.
Super recent.
And I, whether it's good or not, I'm kind of like, I kind of thought school was for school, but learning things.
Well, and then do they have, what's the incentive for them graduating? They can just be takes 6 years to get through college because I'm making bank.
Oh, no, they always get through college. But it's like, hey, did you learn anything? I don't know. I was going to play water polo in college. And then after the first year, I was like, I'm spending 6 hours a day training. Like, I'm not learning. And I can't get a job. I can't do internships. I couldn't do all this stuff. So I was like, there's no future in water polo. But even if there was, I was still like, no, I'm here to learn. That's why I came to college.
How were your parents? What was their approach to education versus athletics?
They were kind of like, whatever.
Okay. So you really got to choose. They weren't necessarily
they weren't like either way. Yeah. My dad, he got recruited into like MIT and Air Force for football. They wanted to play football. But he said, I don't want to play football anymore. And he quit. And he went to the school I went to, Cal Poly Pomona.
Okay.
But he was excellent at football. But he's like, I don't like this. And so he ended up playing rugby in college, which I'm like, I don't know. That was different. But no, he's, so that was always my example. My dad was never like, oh, it has to be this.
Okay.
Or as long as you try hard, that was always our
Excellence. Rule. Perfection? Was perfection a pursuit?
No, I'm not very competitive. Okay. That's actually the biggest thing about me because it's hard to understand because people think I'm athlete and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm athletic, but I don't care about winning. I care about being there for my team or I'd make up some kind of reason, but the whole like drive to win and dominate and all this, I've never had that. I'm just like, well, did we learn?
Did we learn?
Did we have fun?
I love that. What do you care about?
I care about growth. That's always been like the big driver. I've always been like, because I've taught myself everything that I do in marketing. I was actually an HR major, so nothing. It was business administration and development. So it was I think everything's marketing when it comes down to it. But for me, it's always just been how do you grow? Are you better than you were before? Are there different? What have you accomplished kind of thing? And so that's always been my goal is to not waste any time at all. Like I have this whole efficiency principle where I'm like, okay, did it like over the long term, was this worth it? And if it's not, then I'm usually really upset. And so
what are your KPIs to determine whether it was worth it?
It's basically like different parameters in my life, because you can say the financial, but I think the financial incentive is usually the simplest and least applicable. Because if you just say, and I tell business owners this all the time, where I'm like, nobody cares that you want to be a millionaire or you want a 7-figure business or you want all these things. That's a very selfish objective. And honestly, the only person it's going to affect is you.
Right.
So who cares? And so your vision is the brand vision is what we call it, has to be something that's quantifiable. So something you can achieve and have a specific date on, and ambitious. And ambitious is just what it sounds like, where it's kind of like, does it inspire people just by saying it? And so for like our brand vision at the Academy is, we want to certify 20,000 professional marketers by the year 2027. And you're like, oh, well, that sounds ambitious.
Yes.
And you know when it could be achieved.
Exactly.
And I've obviously thought about it. And so this is something worthwhile. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. Well, and that gives a really good example. Before we move on from that question, can you share a little bit more about the Academy, just for context?
Yes. Okay. So the Academy is the culmination of me doing marketing for 20 years, and I've done a bunch of different roles. I've been a CMO. I was president of digitalmarketer.com. Wrote a book about it called Unconventional Marketing. Sold a company using essentially organic methodologies. I've been an executive 4 times. And so I kind of wrapped all of that into this organization I call AI Branding Academy, which is specifically about branding, because when I really thought about, okay, how do you make any strategy, any marketing strategy, if you don't start with branding, then none of it matters.
Right.
Because you might have a successful campaign, or you might have a successful product launch or whatever it is. But after that, like, what's the long-term benefit? And it's like, you can't, so if you make say a new product in a vacuum and it has nothing to do with your overall mission as a company or objectives or values or anything like that, then it's money. Yay.
Right, right.
And to date, that's been enough for companies to succeed, is basically to have just win after win after win and have them all be independent. But what's happening because of AI is that's not going to work anymore. Right. Because paid media is essentially going to become so expensive that you won't be able to be profitable if you're just getting new customers all the time. And so long term, my vision is that a lifetime customer value is going to be like the golden metric that we all live by.
Yes.
Otherwise, who cares? Oh, yeah, you did a good product launch. Oh, yeah, you've had a good year in business. But over the long term, who cares?
Right.
So you have to cultivate a community, and that community comes about when you have a clear mission, clear vision, and communicate it consistently.
It's so interesting because we serve as fractional CMO for a number of companies, and one of the chief metrics that we are looking at is, yes, we want gross number of leads, cold leads. However, in one sense, that's a vanity metric, right? Because, well, how many of them are actually turning into customers? But then how many are repeat customers?
Yes.
What percentage of our overall customer base are repeats from the previous years? And I want to see that number increasing. Sure, we can have cold leads coming in increasing as well. But talk about, to your point, lifetime value. My gosh, that increases so dramatically. And so now I'm so excited the companies, one in particular, is adding new products for the existing customer base rather than constantly, to your point, it's like kind of scattering seeds and seeing what sticks, rather than how do we actually deepen and strengthen the pipeline that goes back decades, as opposed to just starting something new every 16 to 18 months.
Exactly.
And talk about burnout. My gosh.
Yeah, well, it ends up being essentially its own brand every time you do that.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, yeah, we need to make money.
So exhausting.
New brand. It's like, oh, we need to do a campaign. New brand. It's like, no. So I think basically the reason why we have such huge bureaucracies and bigger businesses is because you have to have this middle management layer to manage all these brands that you set up. Now, with AI, what you could do is essentially put all the parameters to your brand into an AI agent, whatever you want to call it, and then just ask it. Like, hey, we need to do a new product. What product would be a good evolution of our current product line?
Yes.
Oh, this. Or, hey, we need an event. What should we do at the event to encourage this action along this marketing strategy that we've been, macro strategy that we set up? Do this. And so essentially eliminates all of that brainstorming, all of the meetings, all of the planning, like all that stuff that we try to do. And the problem is when you have so many employees is that like, well, I got to justify my existence.
Yes.
I'm going to give input.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh my gosh.
Isn't that so true?
Why? And this again is from my experience because I've dealt with, mom and pop, zero revenue startups to $1 billion publicly traded companies, and it's all the same. Like branding's inconsistent. Whenever you have to make a decision, you go, all right, team, let's get together and have 10 of us sit in a room and draw the cloud and put all the ideas, and then we'll kind of make up some parameter for making the decision. No, just say AI based on our objectives, based on our mission, based on our values. What's the next step? And now you just eliminated all that guessing.
And it eliminates the bias and the pride.
Exactly.
I think that that's something too that I actually haven't heard many people speak about. So I really appreciate that you're bringing this to light, because otherwise it is all those individuals that are feeling potentially threatened.
Yeah.
That are concerned over their job, and so it's just whose voice is bigger. We've been experiencing that a little bit too, where
the egos.
all the egos.
No. Well, it's not just from like the middle level. It's especially management
Yes.
or boards where you go on the board, you're like, all right, what's your background? Why are you giving marketing advice? And they'll say like, I don't know anything about marketing, but, and then they'll put in something that doesn't make any sense. And then they'll push the agenda forward.
Yes.
And so I was trying to deal with that for marketers because I'm just like, man, all of these projects that I've done, like half of them have been grenaded just because somebody disagreed on a color or didn't think that target market was the right one because I want my target market to be this, despite all the evidence that it's this.
Simply emotion. Yes.
And then they're like, then they push it and then it fails. And then I'm not going to take the blame for that. You're fired, marketer.
Yes.
And so that's why you see this churn.
Yes.
Kills
That's
me.
so good. So AI helps with, specifically the academy that you've produced, helps with retention, helps with the decision making, streamlines ultimately the continuity of the brands and thus the output of the product offering, new services, events, marketing strategy.
Oh, yeah. And it elevates the marketer. Because what we have to deal with as marketers is, and the way I explain it is that people have been so inundated with ads their entire lives that you think you're good at ads or you think you're good at marketing because you have an opinion because we've seen so much of it. But I always tell people, I'm like, there's a lot of people who drive every day and they still suck at driving.
What a good analogy. That is
like,
so true.
It just doesn't matter that you've seen a lot because I've put all of this into action and I've tested and I've had the experience. I've done all these different things. That makes me an expert.
Right.
Which is why, and it's the same thing with everybody. Like if a plumber came in and said, hey, want me to fix your toilet? I'd be like, great, yes, please go fix the toilet. Lawyer comes in and says, hey, do you need help with a contract? Oh, thank God it's the lawyer. Like, help me with this contract. But when a marketer walks in, it's like, hey, I got the marketing plan. Stop right there. My niece is on TikTok and I want a TikTok plan. And you're like, oh God. No, that's not going to fit. You're in
so good,
commercial construction.
Commercial construction. It's so okay. So really, it eliminates, to your point, the guessing game, and I also love that you said elevates the marketer.
Oh yes. So with that component is basically instead of going into a job and they hire you for the TikTok campaign or whatever, instead of saying, hey, let's figure out what do you want to put on TikTok, you say, hey, let me establish your branding parameters. The way I work is we make 9 brand pillars, and once we have these 9 pillars, we can essentially make every decision and keep it on brand because of these 9 pillars. So instead of us saying, let's do a TikTok campaign, I'm instead going to say, let's get your branding set up. And then I'm going to question the AI to know how to make decisions for your brand. And so now we don't have to have brainstorming. You don't know anything about marketing, why you hired me. And so I'm just going to ask AI. It's going to make sure that I do it right. Problem solved.
Love
we don't
it.
need to talk.
And then the AI is the judge as well.
Exactly. Well,
That's great.
And instead of it being your opinion, the marketer, you could say like, no, this is what AI is telling us to do based on the research.
So to that question of everyone asking, well, are humans still necessary when it comes to AI What's your opinion on that?
Oh, it's 100%. You have to have humans involved because, and even if you say like, okay, we're having AI agents, Claude 3.5 just came out or is coming out soon. And it's like, we could control your computer. And that's actually the key to AI's like massive growth is AI agents. Because instead of you saying like, because I make processes, that's what we do at the Academy. Like, okay, you need to make a podcast page. You do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. And the reason why we do like step-by-step processes is because we knew that the AI agents were coming. And so now what you could do is say, hey, AI, review this process and do all the things. And so it'll say, okay, well, we need to make a TikTok strategy. So I'm going to go in, it's going to do this research on popular TikTok within the industry, going to pull the information, it's going to look at the brand parameters, and it's going to turn it into a campaign strategy. It's going to make all the graphics, and then it's going to post everything on TikTok on this schedule. Now, how many steps would a person take to do that?
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, I could give that to a capable person, and they could do it, but now I could give it to an AI. And
it'll be done so much faster.
Way faster.
Yeah.
And so now me as the marketer, I'm not worried about executing all these 50 different things you have to do for one step of a strategy.
Yes.
I could just say, go, and then it just happens.
Right.
And then I get all my data faster. I can improve the campaign way better, and I don't have the people component, which, I'm still making all the decisions. I just don't have to go to the TikTok expert and the graphic designer and the CRM scheduler and blah, blah, blah. I just say, go do the stuff.
Yeah.
And so what you're getting is more pure executed strategy of the marketer, an individual, versus marketing by committee, because I can't do TikTok and email marketing and SEO and SMS and all these different things because I'm just one person.
That's so good.
But now I can.
Mark, how do you, when you think about, so you were coaching your son's football team about 15 hours a week. You've got this new business. You've got so much. I believe your family's in town right now, and you were so gracious to come here.
They left this morning. So
okay, good. They left this morning. How are you keeping yourself in alignment with your own ideals and your own values and making sure that you're not spreading yourself too thin?
Oh, I'm very bad at it. I go thin, and I know when it's happening. I think I've gone through it so many times now where I go into like high stress season where it's like, okay, I got this and this and this, and everything's happening at the same time. And then I usually just up my kind of like personal care regimen.
Okay.
And I have a ton of strategies now.
I love that. So as the busyness increases, the personal care goes with it.
Yes. Well, but you get like, I got to a certain point where I was like, the system started breaking, and then it's like, okay, I have to stop something.
Yeah. Yes.
But luckily with the football stuff, I knew, okay, season's gonna be over.
Yeah.
You get that 15 hours back. I could survive this long. And so it's really just about knowing yourself and your own like stress tolerance level to know like, okay, this is burnout. Like I know when burnout is coming and I need to head it off or stop, because once you get to full burnout, then you're broken.
Recovery takes that much longer.
It does. Yeah,
right?
You're broken for like a month. Like,
Right.
okay, I need to chill for a month or 3 months or
Right.
6 months. Because I went through a season before I left digitalmarketer.com where I was about there at mega burnout, where I was like, okay, I'm working like 100 hours a week. I'm flying all over the country. I'm getting up super early, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. to get started. And then since I have clients on both coasts, I'm now working till 9 at night. Wow. And then everything started breaking. I'm like, okay, I have to stop this. And then that took about, I want to say 4 months.
Wow. To
like,
really get back
to like, okay, center line.
Yeah.
But I was able to survive it.
Yeah. I'm glad you're
die.
here today. You are alive. So I like that picture, though, that you painted of essentially knowing yourself well enough that you can more or less so create a roadmap so that as you shift this gear, the self-care gear shifts as well with it. So, and then you're monitoring as you're moving so that you know, okay, burnout is here. So as I'm moving closer to the line, I'm keeping in touch with my own needs to the point where, okay, now I need to shift something on a major scale. But with what you were saying with football season, you had a timeline. You knew when it was done. And that's what I think is really important, is that we do let life run away with us. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you was because you and I first met when I was on the Digital Marketer podcast. And right after we hit, we completed the recording and turned it off. So I don't remember exactly how we got to this topic, but I was on the heels of coming out of what I called my wilderness, just time of so much pain and so much transformation. And I likened it to waking up. And your eyes just lit up and you were like, I've gone through that same thing and so few people know what I mean. And so I would love, Mark, if you're willing to share about your experience of awakening, because that concept of looking in the mirror for the first time and being jolted to face reality and thus awaken from almost like this stupor that we lived in. Can you share about your experience with that?
Oh yeah, man, that was hard. It was, and actually it's still hard. It's funny because once I hit that one point where it's like the awakening is what I call it, or Kundalini awakening was the specific experience. And I worked for, I think, 2 years leading up to that point. Okay. Like 2 years after I realized something was wrong. Because what happened was I got the job at Digital Marketer. I was the president of Digital Marketer. I bought this property that my wife and I had always talked about, and we had all this stuff. And I was walking out to the horse pasture because I had horses. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did all the things. I did all the things I thought were going to get me to happiness, where I was like, okay, I accomplished all the stuff. I got all the positions. I did all these things. And I'm like, where's the happiness? I got to the top. Like, where's the happiness up here? Because that's why I had done all the things. And I realized, like, oh my gosh, I was wrong. This has nothing to do with being happy. And so once I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do when I realize I'm on the wrong path? Because I'm very disciplined. So I could set something way off in the distance and I could be like, I'm going to get that no matter what, even if I shouldn't. And so, because I'm just head down, just doing the work.
Yes.
And so what I realized was, okay, I was wrong. I made the wrong decision, or I had the wrong vision in mind. And so I obviously don't know what the right vision is. And so I decided I wasn't going to qualify any of the fixes. So, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do everything. And so I signed up to run a marathon. I started therapy, started men's groups, Bible reading. I got very into going to church, meditation, grounding, sun gazing, did a full range of herbal supplements, gave up alcohol.
Wow.
Gave up beef. Gave up.
You did all of this at the same time.
It was around the same time.
Wow.
Because once I decide I'm going to do something, it's like, there's no reason not to do everything.
Yeah.
And so I started doing all these things for like 1.5 to 2 years. And then what happened was I took a gut biome check. And so, because I thought, I kind of have some stomach issues. Took the gut biome check, found out I was allergic to like 100 foods. And I haven't given them all up even now, but I gave up the big ones, which was the beef, pork, eggs, spinach, broccoli, like all these foods, which was my entire diet. And so, but within a month of doing that, I just woke up. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been in so much pain for my entire life.
Wow.
From like IBS or just massive discomfort, nausea, bloating, like all that stuff I just thought was normal because I'm crazy. And I had lived with it for 25 years, probably longer, probably into my childhood, but definitely when I was 15, I had this kind of like just perpetual depression, or not depression. It was like a light grade depression. Like I'm not going to kill myself, but I'm also never happy.
Yeah.
And that just continued until I was 39.
Wow.
And then I woke up and realized like, oh my gosh, I've been miserable the whole time.
Mark, wow.
And so that's when I started, after that point, then I was like, I'm awake and life's beautiful and the world's beautiful and all these things. But then I realized was that when you become like the light, you shine on all the darkness. And then you start to realize like, oh my gosh, there's so many bad things. Because I always thought evil was like the absence, or I thought when people did evil, it's because they were too lazy to do good. So it's almost like a convenience factor.
Right.
But what I understand now is that no, there's just evil.
Yes.
It's just a thing, just like there's just good.
Yeah.
And so that has been a completely different journey where you learn, at least what I did when I woke up, was that that was like stage, like maybe one of like,
Yes.
who knows what level. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's just, since then, it's just been, trying to be authentic and real. Like, okay, what do I actually want? And what did I want just because I was told I should want it?
Yes.
Like, oh, the cars and the houses and the vacations and all that stuff. Versus now you could literally say like, okay, I know myself. I know what I actually value. And so now I could go get it. Maybe.
Yes. Well, if you don't know, you're constantly chasing the facade.
Well, the default.
Yes.
We've all been trained into this whole, and not to say materialism altogether is bad, but honestly, it's not good.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, apart from having I was just having a conversation about this. A friend of mine genuinely loves cars, the way they work, the mechanisms. That's how his brain works. Whereas another friend of mine, it's a status thing.
Yeah.
And so for him, it's really important that he doesn't go down this path of like that. Trying to get after that car is a sign of unhealth, whereas the other one, actually, it's a sign that he's really walking in who he is and the way he functions. So it's a really beautiful thing when we can identify the why behind the wants and allow for the purity of it, so long as it is in alignment with things that we value, because it brings me joy. Or because it's there. My dad used to do like tinker with cars, and I just love old cars because it makes me feel closer to him, or whatever it is. So I love that. What surprised you in terms of what you really want that you would have never thought, apart from doing this work and waking up?
You know what? It's really the connection to people, because like even as a child, and shadow work was another Carl Jung's philosophy that actually really helped.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah. So shadow work, the way I view it, is basically identifying your triggers and then meditating on why they're there.
Yeah.
And so if you say like, oh, I'm driving in the car, and, oh, this person's driving too slow, and that just, oh no, I'm mad, and it triggers you. You get rageful, and you're just like, honestly, what's happening is, they're just a person driving a slow car. That's it. But you've internalized something. That's
There's something else.
React there. And then what you find, if you learn how to meditate really well, like the best form of meditation I found is that I could think of an emotion, and then I could go back through memories of just that emotion, and then you'll remember way more than if you try to think like,
interesting.
Oh, let me think about when I was 5. It's like, that's not going to do anything.
So rather focus on the emotion and let the emotion
carry
associated with that experiences. Wow.
Yeah, like, okay, now I can see all these experiences. And so now what you'll find is, oh my gosh, when I was 7, my dad was driving the car, and we were behind this old person that just wouldn't move, and he was just so mad, and he got more and more mad, and then he was mad for the rest of the day, and it ruined the whole trip. And then you realize like, oh my gosh, it's this injured child that was actually having that emotion. You just never updated it because you didn't realize that's where it came from. And so with shadow work, you're able to say like, oh my gosh, this is a child's opinion of this situation. I need to forgive whatever happened back then, and then now I can make an adult decision about how I should react to this. And you could still be mad, but you won't have the like unmitigated rage for like, it's such a basic thing that's now ruined how many days of your life, or even moments of your life where you're like, wow, I didn't really have to be upset about that thing.
Wow.
So that actually really helps. So now with meditation, that's what I'll do is I'll say like, okay, what's the emotion? Like, why am I upset right now? And so now I'm really going to think about like, here's all the times I was upset about this. And then if you could find the source, you fix it. Now you're like, oh, I could let go. So yeah, that's.
Wow. Well, I love that you actually did the physical, like, now I can let go.
No, well, that's another lesson.
Tell me about that one. I love it.
I was in fitness for 10 years. I had a gym in California. I actually got into fitness because I was looking to get into e-commerce, and I needed something to sell.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine had learned kettlebell training.
Okay.
And at the time, nobody was kettlebell trained. So I'm like, okay, hey, we could import the kettlebells. I'll do the online e-commerce stuff. You do the training, fitness stuff, and then we're all good. And so he did some things during the business where we couldn't be business partners anymore. And then I had to learn fitness because I was like, yeah, because I played sports and I was athletic, but I never liked training. I didn't like exercise. Like, yes, if there was a pill where you, I'm super shredded and I take this pill, that'd be fine. But that's not how things work. It's all connected.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So I had to learn all the fitness stuff. And so my view of fitness was really, hey, you can do this hyper efficient and you can do minimal. And as long as you're fit, like physically capable, then you're healthy. And so I didn't care about nutrition or supplementation, even though we sold supplements, but I was like, it's really about the training. But what I realize now is that no, there's no disconnection between your body and the thing inside called your mind and all the hormones and everything else. It's all 100% connected with not only how you perform on a mindset level, but also how you feel all the time.
Right.
Yeah. And so after the 10 years of training, I realized like, oh my gosh, I was totally wrong at that point too. Where I thought it was 100% physical, and it's just, there's no disconnect between the mind, body, and spirit kind of thing. And so that's the big difference now. But yeah, the fitness journey was, that's how you get the connection. So now exercise, as much as I hate it, I'm still like, you can't avoid it. It changes how you think, like every time you do it. So
I so appreciate you saying the connection is undeniable between the mind, body, and spirit. I think that was the very first time I started training for my marathon. That's when I realized about the physical connection with the mind and how much endurance and perseverance. Those words I never learned in a physical manner. You learn it in other regards, but when you're in such a digital age, so many of us don't know the value of physical labor. And then when it comes to endurance, like actually your body wants to stop. What's his name? The founder of Spanx.
I know. Blake. Yeah.
I forget her husband. Her husband. I was listening to him, and I believe the stat he said was about 40% of our capacity, our brain tells us it goes into survival mode and says we can't do it. But really, we've got 60% of our physical exertion we haven't employed yet. Yeah. And we could go 60% more. And that was so cool to hear. I mean, David Goggins, he's like the man of the mantra of like, don't quit.
No, and it's so true. And it's different though, because I think in fitness or in sports, it was always like, you got to push and you got to blah, blah, blah. And it was still physical. It still wasn't quite meant like the discipline to push past the pain. But it's like, it's not about the pain. Like people, I think in fitness especially, like think that's the goal. Like, if I hurt, then I did something. It's like, no, what are you talking about? That's a byproduct of you probably training improperly, not, you did the work. You know? It's like, I broke the hammer. That means I did a good job at work. It's like, no.
So then what is the right KPI then to indicate success in the physical exertion?
For me, it's energy. Okay. If I know that, hey, I did this much training and this diet and this, and I felt good. Or I felt energetic.
Oh, I love that.
Or I was more productive.
Actually ending on the high rather than at the lowest point of just being completely exhausted.
Yeah, well, and people think that that's like the goal is to be completely exhausted. I'm like, and I do cold dipping for that reason. Okay. Where I'm like, okay, if I want to separate my mind from my body, then cold dipping is the way to go because your body thinks you're dying. And if you could disconnect your mind from that process, then you could get through the whole thing.
What a good point. Yeah.
Then it's not painful until afterwards because I'll do 10 minutes of 45-degree cold dip, but I do the breathing technique, cold dip breathing, and it's fantastic because the way I like it is because it does disconnect my mind where I'm like I can't think about all the stresses of the world because my body thinks it's dying, and so I have to control my breathing.
Focused.
Yeah, you're so focused, and that's where you could get into that better meditative state that is really difficult to do, especially today.
Oh my gosh.
It's, don't think about anything. Like, how dare you? You just made me think about a million things. It's like, no, we all are thinking way too much about way too many things. And I'm still not great at it. But when I meditate, I can focus and I could actually figure things out, which is why meditation is so helpful. But It's
and it takes practice.
Oh, it's one of the people always start with meditation, like, oh no, you need to meditate. It's like, man, that's like a level 5 skill. You're at level 1, which is exercise for 10 minutes a day.
Yes. Yes.
Like you can build up to this, but that's not where you start.
Yes. I actually did a Joe Dispenza meditation the other day, and it was hard.
Oh, it's tough.
He was like, I want you to focus on your lowest chakra. And I was like, oh God. Like,
what does that mean?
Yeah, I know. He used language, and I know what it is at the actual, what's the definition of that? Yeah. I understand that. But to actually feel that in my body and be so incredibly present. And it was cool because I know that I can get there.
Mm-hmm. That's just
your
practice.
Point of practice, right?
Yeah. And once you get into the practice, then, and it's, I go through waves. Like sometimes I'll be able to meditate like really well and I'll disconnect completely. Where at the time, like I'll forget where I am when I started meditating.
Wow.
And I'll be like, okay, was I in the bedroom or am I outside? Or am I on a beach? Like there's
or on the beach.
Yeah, because I've done it in all these different places.
Yes,
so you're connected to all of it if you do it right. But it's, for me, I found music that really helped called Hammock.
Hammock.
It's like a symphony. Okay. Very intense.
We need to put that in the show notes.
Yeah. try just look at the best of Hammock on YouTube and it'll blow your mind if you meditate right. But again, it's meditation just like exercise where I'm like, just because something worked for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Mm-hmm. Because the only thing that's actually going to work for you is the thing that you do consistently for the next years.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Anything else is like you're just trying somebody else's technique. But if you haven't come up with your own, and this actually all comes all the way back to AI too. Because I'm like, I could show you how to use it and I could show you how to do it, but it's only going to be useful once you adopt it into how you personally function.
Right. And I think that that's when you know that you've really mastered something, is when you can take it and make it your own rather than just being a replica of the masters themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really you becoming, you systematizing and being able to teach it. I think that's like the next, once you're a professional at it, then you being able to teach it to somebody else, which is so hard. Because that's what I try to do.
Right.
But the way I think seems to be very different from everybody else in terms of at least the structure of how I do it. Because I don't think in terms of like, here's the vision, and then I'll figure out the steps on the way there. Like I have to be like, no, here's this step, and then you get the vision.
Well, and you've talked that way. As you've been sitting here, you've been saying I'm at level 1 or step 1. And so I think that that's actually really helpful, is to incrementally break it out. There are some visionaries, sure, but if they're looking, what's the end goal rather than what's step 1? Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot. Just clean your room.
Oh, yeah.
Step
that's
1.
Huge. Make your bed.
Make your bed.
Yeah.
Yes. And so often we're looking to, because, and I think this is in large part too, how we're so surrounded by stimulation, by the end result. Mm-hmm. We see the end result all around us.
It's marketing's fault.
I hate those marketers. But it's true. And we forget about that. That's been a big lesson for me over the last 6 months or so, is that the cultivation is in the process. It's in the level to level. And then to your point, you get to the peak and you missed everything along the way because you were so fixated at the end result. And then you show up and you're like, wait, this isn't even what I wanted. Yeah. Because if we live with our head down and we're not keeping our head up to, am I actually living in alignment with who I want to be, and keeping our eyes up and open and alert to everything around us and centered at the same time. It's kind of this dichotomy of like living with our eyes wide open and aware of what's going on, yet laser focused.
Yes.
And centered.
And also future, think about the future too. Because I mean, that's really the hardest goal. What you just described is being present. It's like, how do you be right here, right now? And I think that's really the definition of being Christ-like. We always talk about like, be Christ-like. And it's like, well, how do you do that? I'm just going to be really nice to everybody. It's like, no, you're going to do your best at every single moment in every single thing you're doing. Like, that's what it means. And that's super hard.
Have you read Richard Rohr?
No.
He's a Franciscan priest, and I just started reading him because I think, I don't know if you grew up in a Christian environment.
Oh, super Catholic.
I grew up very Christian, very conservative, and it's been cool learning additional ways of thinking, and even getting my mind blown again about how much I don't know.
Oh my
Because
gosh,
so
that's a
often
big
it's,
part of it.
this is what I believe. And I'm grasping tightly onto this belief system or system of being, regardless of whether that's, theology, psychology, whatever that system is.
Yeah.
System of being. And just letting go and being taught and being a student perpetually in life surrounding every single topic. And he has some really interesting concepts surrounding Christ and Christ in us and what that actually means. Because if it's true that he existed before the foundation of time, is he actually in all of us? And it's just about us realizing that and then allowing that part of us that is divine and the image of God to be made manifest. And it's not some like, oh, I have it and you don't. It's like, well, actually, we all have that in us if we're in fact in any semblance a likeness of our Creator.
Yeah, if you're in line with that ideal, and it's super hard.
Yes,
well, because you
hard.
inject the ego into everything. We're coming back to the marketing processes.
Yes.
People inject their ego, or they inject some idealized version of their ego, where it's like, oh, I'm a powerful alpha guy, so I'm going to be mean to everybody, and I'm going to be snarky, and I'm going to play golf, and all this crap. I fly on jets, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so missing the point. And the reason I don't like it, because it's marketing. You do want to show that you're successful, and you want to show these different things you've achieved, kind of justifying why people should listen to you. But the problem is that somebody who's never done anything thinks that that's the thing you're trying to achieve. And it's like, for me, I'm like, really what you're trying to achieve is freedom to not have to make decisions based on your current circumstance right now. And that's where most of the people find themselves. We're like, well, I got to make money, and I've been in this industry for 20 years. I'm not going to make this much money outside the industry, even though I hate it. And so I got to just keep on trucking, and it's to make money. And it's, that's the rat race.
Yes.
Is trying to keep up with what you've already achieved.
Yes.
And so instead, the ideal scenario is that, no, you're free to do anything you want. Do you want to, you could go out and buy airplanes and mansions and all this kind of crap, but you better keep that money coming in, because the minute you stop, all of that stuff is going to be lost. And so is that the kind of life you want to live? Like, I have to make $5 million a year? Or, because if I could make like 50 grand a year and be totally comfortable, good.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
enough.
That's so good. A colleague of mine and I were chatting about that very thing and talking about, vanity metrics. If we're looking at everyone around us to define what our KPIs should be for our success, we're always going to be chasing, we're going to be comparing, rather than, oh man, actually, to your point, I actually only need 50,000 because I don't want to be spending my time working, and I want to be spending my time with my kids. And so therefore 50,000 is actually really comfortable.
Yeah.
I
mean, that would just be incredible.
I know. And when we think about vanity metrics and we think about kind of what we're chasing, so many times we're looking for that gross number of, I made 5 million. Well, did you spend 499 million to get the 5 million? Or are you actually netting a good, because you could be netting 50,000 and only making 75 gross, but you've got really low, cost of goods, or you could be having 5 million and netting, 10,000 because you're spending so much and your cost of goods is so high and marketing expenses and all of that. So,
well, you see with the businesses that hire like 100 people, like, oh, we're a big company, look all these people all over the place. I'm like, what?
Right.
There's no efficiency in that. Like, you can't scale it, because if you're saying like, hey, to get to 2 million, I need to hire 50 people, and then to get to 3 million, another 50 people, how's that even going to work? And so that's where the kind of focus on like, okay, how do we systematize? Because that's really what I do, is I look at a situation, I say, okay, how can I systematize this so that the process can be consistently completed?
Yes.
Which is hard. Because when you try to teach anybody, I always like that, like, in coding language, write how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it's like, it's harder than you think. Because it's not, hey, oh yeah, just grab some bread and put the peanut butter on the bread and then put it together. And if you told that to a machine, it wouldn't be able to do that. You just skipped out like 50 steps.
Yeah.
And so
you got to take the bread actually out of the bag.
You take the bread out of the bag,
put it on the
lay
counter.
it flat.
Yeah.
Get a knife. You know. spread the butter, like all these things.
Yeah.
You don't even think about it because they're so automatic. But
Right.
if you gave that same task to like 5 different people, they would all probably have a different process for every single task. So then that leads to inconsistency. And that's where we get machines coming in, because machines are consistent and they don't get bored and they don't break a fingernail and you can't do this anymore, or whatever it is.
I love this. So really, if you've got clarity about what you want, if you've got clarity about what your actual KPIs are that indicate success for you, you then can employ the machines to support it and or teach the machines and the people to do that. So I love that, but it starts with us. It starts with us knowing what we want in the first place to then be able to curate the systems and processes in order to achieve it.
Exactly. Well, and then constantly improving it too.
Yes.
Because I have some processes where I'm like, I've just been doing it for a decade that I don't even think outside of it. And then at that point, you do have to like ask somebody like, hey, check out this process. But I always tell people, I'm like, whatever I teach you, just try it my way first. Because there's a good chance that you don't understand why some of these things are done. And I was actually, my first executive position was as a chief financial officer. And I used to have my accounting assistants and I'd be like, hey, here's the process. And if they skipped a step, which they didn't understand. They're just like, oh, well, I don't know why I would need to put in that document. I'm just going to skip it. This is a waste of time. And it's like, no, because you didn't do that. This report is completely wrong.
Wow.
And so you thinking we had a step that was unnecessary actually broke all of the systems. And so, it's difficult, but I can't operate any other way.
Well, this is an interesting aspect when it comes to leadership, because the systems are, when we're working at a step-by-step incremental level versus the visionary who's just focused on the end. It's like sometimes
the integrator.
yeah, exactly. Have you done much with EOS?
No, not too much.
Okay, I actually haven't either, but they talk a lot about having what are those core roles that you need to have in your company to be able to, like the integrator.
Yeah,
it's so critical.
Well, I think that's going to be the next big position, really, is to say like, hey, let me see your process. How could this be automated with AI? And then let's go forward. Because the real problem with AI that like somebody who's a novice might think like, oh no, you just make this little thing and they'll spit out the thing and you're good to go. It's like, no, you didn't, what we call boxing the AI in. You didn't put parameters around the AI, so now whenever you have somebody use that process, it's going to be a new version based on the content that the AI is using. And so if you're like, oh, it's all of the internet, it's like, okay, well, it might change its opinion on number 50 execution, and now the result is way off base, and you don't know what happened, and it's because you didn't set. We have a purpose, we do definitions, and then we do rules. And so we have all these parameters that we put into our
I love that.
Our GPTs to say, hey, this is the information you pull on. If you're on this question, here's the 5 acceptable answers.
Oh, I love that.
And you go back and forth. So
that's so good.
It makes it consistent.
Yes.
And that goes back to the branding too.
I was about to say the brand pillars.
It's all connected.
Yes.
Because if you don't have anything consistent, if you're just saying, hey, I need something neat today, then it's going to be random every time. And the only thing you actually the thing you have to achieve with branding is recognition. And the only thing people recognize these days are the thing they've seen or heard or smelled or whatever 1,000 times.
Right.
Like 50 times, If you just think of things that you've bought that were outside of like the brands you usually buy from, if you really think about what's the first instance I had of seeing that brand, you'd probably say like, oh, it was that ad I saw on TikTok, and then I clicked on it and there it is. And it's like, probably not. That was probably impression 50.
Oh, well, Google found it can take anywhere from 20 to 500 to convert someone, depending the product and industry, obviously. But good
So
Lord.
So with the branding, like that's why you have to be so consistent, because every impression that you make, and the impressions are not just your ads, because we always think like, oh, what's the ad campaign right now? It's like, no. What's your social media posting like?
Yes.
What's on your homepage? What's your email newsletter? What's the content you're coming out with? What's your office look like? What's the background of your Zoom videos look like?
Yes, even those little details, right?
Oh yeah, what are your customer service reps saying?
Right.
What are your sales reps saying? And all of these are impressions, but a lot of the time we're just like, I'm too busy. I'll just hire a manager. They'll come up with that crap. Problem solved. It's like, no, now that person just made up a branding parameter, and now the brand is off because it's based on that person's personality and preferences and objectives, not yours.
It was so interesting. I was talking with one of our clients the other day, and they were like, we're priced at a Cadillac out of, GMC or all the cars. He was like, we have Cadillac pricing. So we need to have our brand image reflect that. And at first blush, absolutely. However, when you closely examine the actual experience that the customer is going to have, the call center is not a Cadillac call center. They're homegrown in the Midwest. All of them have a nice Southern accent, and you sound like it's like an experience you would have with like a small family-owned business in the Midwest. That's not Cadillac.
No.
And so either we completely change the entire, sure, we can have a really good product priced very high, but if we're not going to be delivering a customer experience that's in alignment with this high-end brand, that doesn't mean that the price changes. What it means is you set the expectation about why, et cetera, et cetera. But we need to stay consistent, to your point, at every single I love that you said, how are the salesmen talking? What are the words they're using? Oh my gosh, yes. Have you looked into or used Gorilla at all? I think that's or Rilla. It's called Rilla, and you basically give it. It's your salesman is hooked up to this Rilla system. It's like a little microphone, and it records the entire conversation. And then what you can see is you can identify at the time that the customer converted. Well, how long did it take for them to get to that point? What conversations did they have? What objective? And it's literally recording it, because otherwise it's just salesman, you tell me.
How'd that go?
Exactly, I know.
It was great.
And so it's these in-person conversations that our salesmen are having that now we actually have the data showing, okay, at 7 minutes and 49 seconds, they had a peak in the conversation and it was on this topic. And so now we can actually systematize the entire conversation. They need to, of course, personalize it. That lends to the wisdom of the salesman and the ability to have interpersonal connection with the customer. But now they know that typically on 0.5 after this segue leading up to it, there's the sale. And it's based on actual data, and then the top performing salesman can teach the youngers.
Yeah, and it's not just, because otherwise what you usually have is the person with the best personality, or the person who's been there the longest and knows the most stuff, or whatever it is, but you can't duplicate it.
No,
and then
exactly.
What's the point?
Right. And then people do blame personality, and like, well, I just don't have what it takes. I don't have the personality.
Yes.
And it's like, no, you can learn it. Look, here's how.
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
Learn it.
Yeah, you should learn it. What are your favorite tools right now for AI? I mean, what are you guiding people to use? Kind of leading them into, okay, now you're ready to come in for the academy.
I only use a few because what I found, and this is going back to when the internet started.
Yeah.
I'm going to date myself a little bit. But when the internet started, you had all these solutions, all these potential, things you could use to get online. And what I started doing was I was like, you know what? I don't want to waste time learning something that's not going to be around in 6 months. So I'm just going to wait and see who's the top, who's not going to go anywhere.
Yep.
Plus, who's probably going to be the one to acquire all these other ones.
Yes.
And so unless it's been used significantly, unless there's already a whole bunch of educational assets on it, I'm like, it's not significant enough. I can't invest the time in it. So we only go with ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude, Midjourney, Perplexity, HeyGen. HeyGen's a little out there one. And then Opus and Runway.
Okay, I don't know Runway.
Runway's the video creator. So you can basically turn any image into like B-roll is how we use it most of the time.
Turning image into B-roll.
Oh yeah. It's that's one of my favorite things to do. Because with
exciting.
Midjourney, so I call it the AI branding prompt generator. And so you go into this it's just a Google sheet, but you input what you want for your image and then you select the parameters of your brand. One of the primary one's the mood. So if you say like, hey, my brand's supposed to communicate excitement. And here's my brand colors. What it'll do is spit out a prompt that will then make all of your AI imagery brand specific. And so when you look at the Academy, it's all AI images, but they have like the colors you'll see of like the clothing, the lighting, like the general feel of it is all consistent because I use these parameters. And then what you do, you generate that image and then you stick it into Runway and now you have an animated version of it, which is a little trickier.
Yes, that's so interesting.
AI is not perfect, but you can start to see where it's headed.
Yes.
And that's again why I went back to branding, because I'm like, well, if anybody could generate any image of anything, why would my images be preferred? And it's because they're flavored, they're branded in the way that a specific audience is going to like. And now you got them.
So good, Mark.
They know what you're going to do.
Right.
Versus what a lot of companies do, which is generate me something that looks cool. And that's why you see all these goofy, AI images where you're like, that's neat, I guess. But I never subscribe to something I've seen once.
Yes. Oh, no.
I need you to earn it.
Yes. Okay, question for you. So I know that we're coming up to our time here, and I want to ask you something. I want to ask, how has your waking up, that whole experience, translated into the way you do business?
Oh, enormously. I mean, it's well, before, like, money was always a big objective, right? Like, I just gotta make more money. And now I'm like, no, that's not the point. Also, I don't really care about money. That was another realization. Like, this just doesn't matter to me that much. Other than being able to survive. Like, that's the main thing. But for me, it was like, okay, what is going to give me a sense of accomplishment? What's going to give me something that I could build onto? Because a lot of times we think like, I'm going to build this thing, but it's like, well, yeah, but then time's going to pass and that's not going to matter anymore. So what can I continue to build forever? And so for me, I went from... you know what? I was very much in survival mode, which a lot of, I think, people are. Yeah. Where it's just like, well, I just got to get by. You know, I'll do whatever. Where now I'm like, no, I know what I don't like.
Yes.
So I'm going to avoid the stuff I don't like. And I know the mistakes I made with my previous businesses. And so for me, like, because I had a design agency, a website design agency, and I was like, man, I hated that because I couldn't get the content from the clients. The clients always had terrible opinions, and I didn't like the projects we made. But now I think, like, no, if I did it right, like with my new mindset, I could say, no, I'm going to control the process.
Yes.
I'm going to set my expectations. I'm going to set a proper price that's going to be even with the amount of work I'm putting into it. That was a big mistake of mine, where I charged like nothing. Well, my original goal for my agency was to elevate small business to the level of big business. So I'm like, you don't have to have a big business to have like a really good looking online presence.
Yes.
And that's what I tried to do. And then the secondary objective was to fix the internet by making the people like doctors, instead of me making the content for the doctor should make the content. So I was going to teach small business owners how to make the content so it was genuine and original.
Yes.
That didn't really work because it was like 5% of the time.
They have no time.
No, they have no time. But now I think like, okay, well now I understand that. They don't want to do marketing. They don't want to do content. But if I could get the information from them in whatever way possible, an interview, now I could use AI to execute that.
Nice.
It could still be genuine, could still represent the brand for reals, and I could still elevate what they are. And so I think my main goal now is just to ensure that I'm genuine with the objective and the process, and then building something that can achieve more than just money, which is like elevating the marketing profession. That's the current goal.
That's so good.
And I can do lots with that.
You can do lots. That's what's so beautiful, is that there's so many areas to go, but you're staying on brand to your original point. Okay, so knowing what you want puts you in the driver's seat so that you truly are the one dictating terms, and we have to stay on process. You can't short circuit the system.
The thing that you do when you don't do that, when you don't stay on your purpose, is you're able to give yourself an out to say like, oh, well, I wanted to achieve that, but then, Bob got in the way. Oh, man. Or, my kids got busy and I was too busy. I couldn't do it.
When you've got your clear-cut process.
You got your process. You're just like, no, I said I was going to do this, and I could be variable. I could be versatile enough to be able to achieve it.
That's so good. The clarity of the process creates a pathway to eliminate excuses and keep you focused on your purpose.
And be versatile enough to accomplish it. Because if you just said like, I'm going to build this thing and sell it for $1 billion, and then you don't do it, like, oh, well, that's just a straight up failure. Versus I'm going to do this thing because it's in line with what I actually want to achieve. that thing didn't work. It didn't change
The
what I'm
ultimate
doing.
vision, yes, the ultimate mission.
Yeah, because you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Everybody knows, everybody talks about it, but it's hard to say, like, no, you're going to make bad decisions. They're going to go terribly, and you're going to lose money and time, and you're going to be very upset, and you're still going to have to do it like that.
So that's so interesting. So essentially making sure that the end goal, let's say, is, the vision is almost big enough that it transcends the small failures along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
That's
Because if you don't have that, then everything's going to be in your way. And honestly, everything's going to fail too. So if you're not already factoring that in, that, some of this stuff isn't going to work. I come up with bad ideas all the time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Everybody does. Ideas are easy. But once you find something that's in line with everything else, then you're like, no, I'm going to keep doing this no matter what. And that's it. So I'm not going to fail overall because I'm not going to stop. And
if you're factoring in failure and planning on failure, and failure is part of the process.
It'd be weird if it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Oh, everything. Well, and you see people like that where it's just like somebody who's just, like Mahomes, the quarterback. Oh, I was an awesome kid at sports, and I was an awesome this at sports, and now I'm the top of everything at sports. And you're just like, wow, that must be nice. That's weird. But you can see it in how he talks. And you're just like, man, you're too young and have achieved too much. Like if you went up to here, what's above that?
What's above that?
Yeah.
What an interesting perspective.
Oh, but you see it, and then you see these guys fall apart. Yeah. And that's really what I saw, was like when I looked at middle-aged men, and some middle-aged men just fall apart. And you're just like, man, how do I not do that? For me, I had to go through that whole process. Otherwise, I would have fallen apart or been dead. That's an option too.
Right.
And so you have to get past that. And if you can't, it's really bad.
And one thing that I think is remarkable, going back to when you were kind of sharing your story, that from 15 to 39, you lived in just almost like this grayness of depression. It wasn't that bad that you were potentially going to take your life, perhaps. Maybe there were days, but it was just kind of this steady permeating depression. And you were on your way to the top, and you reached the top still maintaining that state. And so with the awakening that you talked about, and being willing to really ask those hard questions of what do I want? That's where, do you feel free?
Way freer. Well, I'm happy.
Yeah, you're happy.
Oh my God.
Happy and free.
Because I knew that growing up too. I'm like, I cannot remember the last time I was happy. And I try to think through my memories and think like, when was I happy? And then that was also a red flag.
Wow.
It was like, I was never happy. Now I'm like, I'm happy multiple times a day. And I'm like, wow, this is still 1,000 times better than before, where nothing actually mattered. Oh, yeah, no. So I'd say if you're in that state
Yes.
of just blah, and thinking that you'll get somewhere like that, it's probably not going to happen. You need to probably go to therapy. That's usually the first step. Not meditation, because it's hard. Just go talk to somebody. BetterHelp. I think I tried BetterHelp.
Yeah.
I did. I've actually done on and off therapy for longer than that, probably 8 years or so. Mm-hmm. And there was always a stigma. I think there's way less of a stigma now.
I agree.
But I always tell people,
better.
I'm like, get therapy. Because even going to your friends and family, that's so hard. And they have their their conceptions of you.
Right.
No, talk to a stranger.
Yes. Yeah.
Way easier. It could be free.
Literally. I remember the first time, it was 3 years ago, when I was like, what is this feeling? I was on a plane coming from California back to DC, and I was like, well, I've never felt this before. What is this feeling? And I was like, oh, I'm happy.
Oh, wow.
And it's remarkable. It's really remarkable when you actually experience joy. Or there's a difference between joy and happiness, but to feel happy, it's real privilege.
Oh yeah,
but it takes a lot of work.
It does, yeah. And a lot of times it's temporary. You're like, oh, if I just keep this state, it's like yeah, it's a circle. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and that's where joy, I really do believe, can be a sustaining. It's part of almost like your being, where there's these core elements that can be a part of the human experience. Happiness does have the peaks, but I think it's so worthy of the pursuit, because there's so much life is so beautiful. You
It
said
is.
that. You said all of a sudden it was like life was so beautiful for you. And that's what I experienced. When I woke up, it was like, look at all this color.
Oh, so cool.
I'd been living in the gray for my entire
everything
life.
was just bad. And you're like, no, it doesn't have to be. You know, but also it is. There are bad things and there's super sad things. And I think what you start to realize is that every emotion is good. And if you use, transmutation, you could actually convert those feelings into energy for any feeling you want. But you do have to feel it all, which is, I think, what we try to avoid most of the time. That's why we self-medicate with entertainment and, drugs and whatever else, is because we're trying to not feel the whatever. It's like, no, obviously your brain is making you feel this for a certain reason and you're trying to avoid it. Like, no, find out why it's there. And then you could say, oh, yeah, of course I'm sad. My grandfather died. Why would you not be sad? That'd be psycho.
It's actually good. Yeah, it's actually really, really good.
Oh, you're not tough enough. You're not a man. Like, oh my gosh. Like, good Lord. Any guys that like that, the alpha trope, I'm just like, you need to go to therapy.
Yes.
You value the wrong things.
Yes. Well, and I think we've all experienced that so much, whether it was the alpha trope or the shame over emotions from childhood or whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much deep within us until we actually hold up the magnifying glass and do the work to know the truth of what has happened to then lend to us today and why we hold these memories and these memories expressed in narratives over ourselves.
But the triggers, I think, is the best way.
Yes.
Like, just next time you get super mad at something, stop and be like, why is this making me so upset? And then just that one step alone, you'll start to be like, oh my gosh, I'm super pissed because of this way over there. There's nothing to do with the situation currently. And it's totally affecting me now. And now I'm affecting you. And now I'm perpetuating awful.
Perpetuating awful. I'd love to end with that, actually, because I think that if we can have one piece of kind of takeaway homework, it's, okay, the next time I feel angry, stop and ask why. Mark, thank you so much. It was wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you. This is an amazing mix of business and personal development.
Likewise.
So probably the best one ever.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. Thanks to you. I so appreciate it. Appreciate you.